My recollection from
Madam
Masons
Chairman?
is that if they're not here, they're an aye vote, right? I mean, they're aye votes anyway, so you can feel free to tell me, to be honest.
Representative Connolly.
Oh, here.
Flitner.
Here.
Hallinan.
Excused,
LeBeau.
Here.
Ottman.
excused.
Romero Martinez.
Here.
Stivar.
Present.
War.
Excused,
Madam Chairman.
here.
Madam Chairman, we have 6 present, 3 excused.
Okay. Oh, here's one.
Okay.
Call present, Representative Ottman. Tell her you're present. We've already started. Okay, thank you. All right. Good morning, committee. We've got 2 bills up this morning, and we have a rather small audience, smaller than I thought, but I'll give you guys my little speech anyway, which is just a reminder that the 2 bills up today are on, emotional, contentious subjects, and I would ask everybody to refrain from suggesting what other people's motivation might or might not be and stay civil. We're all still here in Wyoming, and we live with each other. And so if we could just bear with that, there's many steps in this process. Here's the way I'm planning to do it, and it doesn't look like it will make that much difference, but what we want to do is have Representative Rodriguez Williams, sorry, I got all my Hispanic last names stuck out in my mind, how very rude of me. Representative Rodriguez Williams present her bill. Then I'm going to have Representative Romero Martinez present his bill. Then I will take testimony, and you can testify on both bills at once. It seemed like it would be the same people you don't have to testify on both bills, but you can just state clearly your comments about House Bill 92 or House Bill 149. Remember to keep your comments to the bill. We're all have lived in America for a long while. We don't need to hear the history of, abortion in the world or any such thing. Stick to the specifics of the bills, page number, line number, suggestions or something specific that you don't like. We don't need to have a broad thing. If we, right now, it doesn't look like I'll need to significantly limit people's time, but if we end up getting more people come in, then I'll check and see so that what my intention was to take an hour of public testimony and then we'll work the bills. So that's the plan. Any questions, committee? Okay. Representative Rodriguez Williams, come on up.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman.
Welcome.
And members of the committee. I'm Representative Rachel Rodriguez Williams with House District 50. And this morning I present to you House Bill 92 and move it for your consideration. This bill solves the problem of abortion in the state of Wyoming. Essentially, it's a piece of legislation that's, if enacted, would ban abortion if the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This legislation would put Wyoming in with several other states who already have legislation in place to protect the unborn upon reversal of Roe v. Wade. This bill limits the circumstances under which an abortion may be performed, except when necessary to preserve the woman from serious risk of death or substantial and irreversible physical impairment of major bodily function, not including any psychological or emotional condition. This bill also limits the use of appropriated funds. Furthermore, it provides a delayed effective date pending certification by the Wyoming Attorney General. And if I can walk you through the bill.
Go right ahead.
On page 1, section 1 basically amends Wyoming State Statute 35.6.102 and 35.6.117. This bill would repeal section A. Looking at section B, I pretty much covered that. Moving down to Section C, for purposes of subsection B of this section, the Attorney General shall review any final decisions of the Supreme Court of the United States related to Roe v. Wade or otherwise related to abortion to determine whether the enforcement of Section B of this section would be fully authorized under that decision. This bill gives the Attorney General states that the Attorney General shall, within 30 days of the date of the final decision of the Supreme Court decision, report the results of each review under this subsection to the Joint Judiciary Interim Committee, and if applicable, certify the results of the review to the Office of the Secretary of State. Moving further down on page 3, under section 35.6.117, use of appropriated funds for abortion prohibited. This amendment would repeal Section A, put into place Section B, which basically says no funds appropriated by the legislature of the state of Wyoming shall be used to pay for abortions except when necessary to preserve the woman from serious risk, etc. Moving down to Section 2, after the same applies as we previously went through. After receiving certification from the Attorney General that 35.6.102B is effective, as provided in that subsection, the Secretary of State shall report that fact to the Management Council of the Legislature and the Wyoming State Board of Medicine, and shall immediately publish the effective date of Wyoming Statute 35.6.102B and 35.6.117B on the website of the Secretary of State's website, which effective date shall be 5 days after the date that the Secretary of State received that certification. The publication under this section shall also provide that 35.6.102A and 35.6.117A are repealed on that date. And then this act would is effective immediately upon completion of all the acts necessary for it to become law.
Okay, questions for Representative Rodriguez-Williams? Representative Connolly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Rodriguez-Williams, I'm drawing on my, at this point, kind of old and rusty law degree, but I'm having a really hard time following here how this would work and not abrogate our responsibilities as a legislature. We've got a you're basing it on overturning a Supreme Court decision, or a Supreme Court decision overruling a very specific court case that has had numerous other court cases that have interpreted it, such as Casey, for example, which actually gets to the issue of viability and states' rights, actually, that's really the states' rights decision there. And then has us having our Attorney General, so an executive branch appointee, review it to understand whether this Section B would be quote unquote fully authorized for changes to our statutes when we don't know what that ruling is. I am very confused about how this would actually work in Wyoming, again, without us abrogating our rights and responsibilities as a legislature, because it's about something in the future that we haven't seen yet. And I'll just be honest with you, we just went down that road with the special session, anticipating what a Supreme Court decision might be or what a determination might be, and that didn't work so well for us. So I'm really concerned and curious about how this would actually operate.
Representative Rodriguez-Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and Representative Conley, thank you for your question. There are, in fact, a wealth of cases holding that a state legislature may make law to go into effect upon the occurrence of a future contingent event. More specifically, a state can make implementation of a statute turn on action by the United States Supreme Court, as several states have done in other areas of law. And to date, 11 states have enacted laws that would prohibit abortion upon the overturning of Roe v. Wade. I hope that answers your question.
Representative Connolly.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I mean, I'm familiar, they're called trigger law, they're trigger statutes, and that this is a national movement going on right now. But again, I don't see how it operates in Wyoming. I honestly do not understand how Section C, where you turn over the responsibility of interpretation to the Attorney General for us, the legislature. That to me does not make, I am confused. It doesn't make sense to me in terms of process.
Representative LeBeau.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Representative Rodriguez-Williams. I got a question. I'm kind of curious and a little concerned on your amendment to 35-6-117. So your pages in which you're amending on page 4, lines 2 through 4, this subsection is repealed on the date that subsection B of this section becomes effective. And I have kind of concerns with what my colleague had just brought up. So are you telling me that this subsection is going to be repealed on the date, that this section becomes effective? So my understanding of it back to lines 19 and 20 on page 3. So the result of incest or sexual assault, so that goes away. There's going to be no recourse if there is cases of incest or sexual assault. Is that correct? Am I reading that right in this bill?
Representative Rodriguez-Williams.
Madam Chairman, Representative Conley, I'll start with your question first, or your concern. So if I'm interpreting your concern correctly, your concern is basically involving third parties, which would be the executive branch, the Attorney General, which I'm referencing in this bill. Yes, the law would take effect upon the action of a third party as written in this bill. In this case, the Supreme Court, by overturning Roe v. Wade, it does not constitute an improper delegation of legislative power, if that specifically is your concern, so long as the legislature has determined what that action is, which is specifically spelled out in this bill. A law prohibiting abortion that would take effect upon the overruling of Roe v. Wade would not delegate to the Supreme Court or any third party the authority to define conduct as criminal under state law. And there is case law that supports that decision. So thus, there's no delegation of legislative power in such legislation. And Representative LeBeau, thank you for your question. The answer to your question is yes, that subsection would be repealed under A. Section A would be repealed, and you specifically cited page 4, lines 2 through 5. If you look at the end of line 5 in the red writing, it states there through line 6 and 7, this subsection is repealed on the date that subsection B of this section becomes effective. So yes, to answer your question, yes.
More questions for Representative Rodriguez-Williams? Representative LeBeau.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Representative Rodriguez-Williams, my other question is on page 4. So that subsection B there, the lines 6 through 12, but particularly lines 10 through 11. I'm just concerned about not including any psychological or emotional conditions. And I just don't think that's good for, particularly you answered my question on the previous section being repealed. If a pregnancy results because of incest or sexual assault, that's going to go away. But then there's no appropriations including any psychological or emotional conditions. And there's a whole spectrum in those particular cases for people, victims in Wyoming, the state of Wyoming, that I just don't think this does due diligence in taking care of our people for traumatic events that happen. And so would you agree?
Representative Rodriguez-Williams.
Madam Chairman, Representative LeBeau, thank you for sharing your concerns. I would just pose the question to the committee here, is someone's life really worth less than anyone else because of the way that they were conceived? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, any more questions specific to this bill? So those of you that arrived a little bit late on the committee, here is how we're going to do this. We're going to hear the presentation by the sponsor of this bill, then we'll hear the presentation by the sponsor of the next bill. I'm going to allow the testimony, people who want to testify on both bills at once, specifically speaking to each bill, just so that people don't have to pop up and down or zoom in and out or whatever. And then after that, if necessary, up to an hour, although we don't have that big of a crowd, so that would be okay. I want us to be able to have time then to work both bills. And keep in mind that, if these work forward, obviously there's also plenty of time on the floor to, for further discussion. So we need to make sure, I think, to allow enough time for the citizens who can't talk on the floor. Okay, any final questions for Representative Rodriguez-Williams on this bill? Thank you. You'll probably want to sit around unless you've got something else that you want to, okay. Representative Romero Martinez, would you like to present your bill, please? Good morning, Representative Romero Martinez.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Representative Romero Martinez, House District 44. I move House Bill 149 and ask for your favorable consideration. This bill came about last year, passed this committee, passed the Senate committee, and ended up sitting in a drawer on the Senate side. I think it's a pretty strong bill. We've talked to a lot of stakeholders. And basically, as presented more than one time, this is an act related to abortions, prohibiting abortions for selective reasons. I call it the Civil Rights for the Unborn law, even though you can't use that in the title. That's really what it is. If I could draw your attention again to page number 2, subsection line 9 through 21, basically. A, B, C, D, and E. Basically, those are 5 reasons why people have abortions, for a variety of reasons. In this situation, what's happening is people are getting genetic tests done, and particularly because of the unborn child's or fetus or embryo's sex, race, color, national origin, or ancestry, people are choosing to procure an abortion. And what this bill does, and as on page 3, line 2, makes the offense guilty of the offense of a felony punishable by imprisonment for not more than 14 years, subject to liability for wrongful death. In line 8, subsection C, any healthcare provider licensed under Title 33 of the Wyoming statute who performs such a type of abortion in violation of this section shall be subject to discipline under Wyoming statute 33-1-118C and applicable provisions of Title 33 of the Wyoming statute. 33-1-118, healthcare license boards authority to discipline licensees for sexual misconduct and perform prohibited abortions. On page 4, line 14, you see again the term disability means any disease, defect, or disorder that could substantially limit one or more major life activities, including but not limited to physical, mental, or intellectual disability, disorder or disease, physical disfigurement, scoliosis, dwarfism, Down syndrome, and then the rest of that list there. Basically, what's happening is a person will get a genetic test. They find out that their child has one of these or may have one of these situations. diagnoses, and they're choosing abortion as a result. What we're calling designer babies also is an issue. Some people want to have the perfect child, and they're trying to play God, quite frankly. And I'll stand for questions.
Questions for Representative Romero Martinez? Representative Connolly?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to have a series of them. First, Representative Romero Martinez, I assume that you're aware that there are no abortions being performed in Wyoming right now.
Madam
Representative Romero
Madam
Martinez.
Chair, Representative Conley, I think there are different types of abortions happening in Wyoming. Maybe we don't have a good process to know that, but I think 80% of the abortions, maybe not related to this bill, but one being heard across the hall, would be abortions through a pill. In other words, you get the pill, it's mail ordered to you, and you have it that way. So I think abortions are happening. It's just different types of abortions. And I understand there's a lot of abortions are being referred out. So I do hear what you're saying. There's a case of a lady who lives here in Cheyenne. I've asked her to come and testify. It's really cold and early mornings. And she also had, I could confirm what you're saying as, at least partially true in that she was referred out to Colorado. And she referred to from Dr. A to Dr. B, and then Dr. B to Dr. C. And so I'm aware of that I think it's a form of trafficking that's taking place, and probably even coercion, quite frankly.
Did you have a follow-up?
Madam Chair, I have lots of questions.
Well, I'll give you a couple at a time and then dole it out. Have another
Okay,
one.
Okay. So first, Representative Romero Martinez, a doctor informing a patient about where to get health care can never be called trafficking. And so I don't think that should just stand without people in the audience and in the public hearing someone say something differently than that. But I have two particular issues with this bill that I want to talk with you about. And one of them is in relationship to a doctor-patient relationship. And you just talked about a doctor and a patient. And when I read this bill and I read what it does in terms of the doctor-patient relationship, it concerns me greatly. So the road that I want to go down is kind of thinking about a pregnancy. And I think we would both agree that we really want the best care possible for a pregnant woman. We just do. And we understand that that's healthcare, and that a relationship between a doctor and a patient is incredibly important. So in here, it says, and so I can just imagine a pregnant woman going for, 6 weeks checkup, 3-month checkup, whatever. And then you start to have some tests done. All of us who have been pregnant have gone through that. You start to have some tests done. And what happens if instead of just getting that kind of wonderful news that everything is going okay, one of those tests indicate that, in fact, things are not going perfectly? Now, we don't understand at this point exactly what is happening, but things aren't going perfectly, right? So don't you agree that it would be best for a doctor and his patient, a pregnant woman, to be able to explore what's going on in order for her and her fetus to get the best possible care? But what this bill says to me is if that doctor even suspects that that information could cause the woman to have a legal abortion elsewhere, in Colorado, for example, like you had just mentioned, that doctor would be liable for punishment because of Section A. That simply giving information and exploring what is going on, if that doctor suspected for a second, that doctor could be guilty of a felony punishable by imprisonment of not more than 14 years. Is that what, is that the intent?
Representative Romero Martinez.
Madam Chair, Representative Conley, thank you for your question. And I do agree that we do want the best care available for the woman, for the expecting mother. And I think we talked about several options last year, and I hope we consider more options this year and moving forward. There was an article that was brought to my attention in the last 36 hours in relation to such disorders, whether it's at that 6-week time frame or that 3-month time frame. The source was New York Times, and the title was, "When they warn of rare disorders, these prenatal tests are usually wrong." And the number that they give in this very lengthy article is 85% of the time they're wrong. So I think sometimes not per se, sometimes one who is, when a woman is pregnant, they often have a genetic test done, which is oftentimes wrong, and may choose an abortion when in fact there's nothing wrong with the child at all. I hope that answers your question.
I'm just going to branch off and let other people, any other questions from the other end of the? Representative LeBeau.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Representative Romero Martinez. So, I'm just thinking of Wyoming here, and I'm thinking of our people and thinking of our women, and so you talked. So what I'd like to know, what problem specifically is your bill trying to solve in Wyoming? How many of our women are seeking or even thinking about their healthcare choices? And, I just would like you to answer the question, how many of our people in Wyoming are supposedly, in your words, wanting to have designer babies, and 2, trying to play God? What is the statistics here? Is that a problem? Can you give me statistics? Where's that problem at here in this state?
Representative Romero Martinez.
That's a good question, and honestly, I don't know what reporting we have in place right now. I would defer that question to somebody that knows more about the reporting as it is now. And just a point of correction, I use those words, but I'm not the only one using those words. We're seeing this happen more and more. And what we're really trying to prevent from this bill, with this bill, is discriminatory abortions based on those 5 reasons. And it's sad that we think that way. We live in a culture now where it's ego comparative. Whether we see that with our colleagues here, or we see that in the workplace, or we just see that walking through Walmart. We have become so stuck on pride, actually, that there's a whole slew of social ills. So this is trying to prevent that specific case. I don't know if I'm answering your question satisfactorily, or if I would even be able to change your mind, but the main thing is looking at the value of the preborn or unborn child just as equally as any life from conception to natural death. And that's, I digress.
Okay, a couple more questions, and then I think we'll open up to public comment, because of course we have more time before us. We can ask questions. Representative Connolly, did you have another question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to go specifically to page 4 in the definition of disability, and the added clause of a disability includes the following: the disease, defect, or disorder, et cetera, and that language that I'm familiar with ADA. But at the end, it has a lethal fetal anomaly as one of the definitions of disability. And then it defines lethal fetal anomaly means a fetal condition diagnosed before birth that if the pregnancy results in a live birth, will with reasonable certainty result in the death of the child not more than 3 months after the child's birth. This inclusion and then definition honestly gave me chills thinking about what this meant. And that it was that no abortion could be performed if it was clear that the fetus or the newborn baby would die within 3 months. And you talked about data, and I'd like to see the data that you just talked about. But one of the elements of data that we know right now is that infants, newborns, feel pain. They do. They feel pain, and we understand that pain causes suffering. We know a little bit less about fetuses because you can't do those kinds of testing, but we know that with newborns. So to me, the inclusion, and I'm curious about why you would include a lethal fetal anomaly, knowing that there's death, as one of the definitions of disability, when you're confident it will cause pain and suffering to that newborn baby.
Representative Romero Martinez?
To answer, Madam Chair and Representative Connolly, to attempt to answer that very good question, I think the point is if it was clear. And I think with this new research, we're seeing that 85% of the time it's not clear. And I know I've given an example and haven't brought in someone to testify today, but the one story that I heard that was from here, and you're correct, they were told that they had an anomaly. They couldn't do it here at Life Care. I can't remember the name of the place. When they were referred out to Colorado, that doctor then said, well, you got to go to Planned Parenthood. So it went from handoff to handoff to handoff. By the time she got there, her story was, okay, well, your life is in danger. You need to, we need to just go ahead and it was what tends to happen. And when we go back into and I'm not trying to give the whole history.
Yeah, Representative Romero Martinez, see if you can answer this question specifically. So
if it, I guess I think I was almost there. So if
Okay.
it was clear, then I can understand that concern. But in most of these cases, even with the advancement in technology with prenatal care, oftentimes those types of early diagnoses are wrong, and oftentimes they are used just to produce another abortion, which oftentimes is like an assembly line. So.
Okay, I think there's probably a never-ending stream of questions. So we were going to actually stop at the presentation of this now and enable us to hear from the folks in the audience. Bonnie, did we end up having any people online? We have three, okay. So just so that I can keep track of time, if I could see a show of hands, you don't know what you're signing up for yet. Yeah, don't raise your hand until I tell you. It's going to be to provide cookies for the entire legislature for a week. So just hold on a second. Now, if I could ask for a show of hands of people who want to testify in favor of these bills, just a show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think I have 8 or well, I'll just call it about 10. And how many in the audience want to testify against the bills? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Roughly a 2 to 1. So I think yes.
And Madam Chair, we have 2 people online that want to testify against the bill.
Okay. So, all right. So that's about a 2 to 1. So I think, so what I will do is just, and we've got, let's see, that added up to what, 15? Okay. Because we always end up exceeding, I'm going to call that 3 minutes per person. Did I do my math right? Roughly, because it always runs over. And I'll just call on, ask for people to come forward, 2 in favor, 1 against, and try to balance it out by roughly the numbers. I'm going to actually set my, do you want to run time? Thank you. That's right, that'll be better. And don't throw it at anybody. 3 minutes per person. And we'll we'll just do it that way, and after an hour, I'm going to stop. You mean, even if more people come in, that just is gonna how it's gonna be. And as a reminder, because I do have new people in, remember, please try not to suggest what other people's motives are or what failings you see in them or anything like that. Stick to the bills. We don't need to hear discussion of the history of the pro-life movement or abortion or women in the world or that sort of thing, okay? So you may testify on both bills, so you don't have to sit down and get up and sit down and get up. But just be clear, if you come up and say, okay, the first bill I want to talk about is, for example, 149, and then make a specific comment or a page reference or something like that, and then you can say about the other one, and you got 3 minutes to do it all in. So organize your thoughts, and if it gets towards the end and other people have said what you have to say and you don't really have anything to add, feel free to just come up and say, I agree with what was said, it's something or other, and then go sit down again. That's how we'll do it. Okay, so I'll just start on the left. Somebody who wants to speak in favor of the bill, and why don't you come up 2 at a time? Whoever gets up, just come up and sit in the chairs. Don't lounge about. There's a little black button in the part closest to you of the microphone stand, and when you press it, it should make a green light. Welcome. Introduce yourself for the committee.
Good morning, Madam Chair, honorable representatives. My name is Steve Milia, and I would like to talk in favor of this bill. I agree with absolutely everything that the Honorable Rodriguez Williams talks about in her bill, and Honorable Romero Martinez talks about. I would like to first say that in reference to, okay, my memory's terrible. I think it was Representative Conley or Representative LeBeau that the genetic things. My second daughter was born 4 months early, and they said, you should just let her die because she's going to be bad. And they said she'll die within 24 hours. Okay, 72 hours. Okay, the first month. And she kept on living. They said, oh, she's going to have all these problems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they advised us just to, pull the plug. And now she's 36 years old, and other being a little ornery, she's in perfect health, married, college degree, et cetera. And then my third daughter was conceived when I was 47, and my wife was 45. And they did a genetic test, and they said, we suggest that you abort her because there's a possibility of her genetic defects. We were not pleased with that talk from the doctor, and we said, no, not going to happen. And so now she's 30, and she's not really ornery, but she's in perfect health, college degree, married, 2 kids, so that's fantastic. And a lot of people say, well, it's just a fetus, and I'm going, no, it's a womb development child, and as I see it, it is a Wyoming citizen. The mom needs support, and the baby needs support, and I would say of all the dire consequences that were told to us, none of it came through. And there was a young man that I had as a student one time that he was conceived by his mother at her 15th birthday by rape. The mother carried him to term, and when I had him in class, he was the most mature and intelligent young man. I'm going, I should be as mature as him, and I was in my 30s. And I'm going, wow, if he had been aborted because it was a rape, the world would be a lesser place. And he was, I still remember him. So I am in favor of both of these bills, and I ask for your consideration on an aye vote. Thank you so much.
Any questions for Mr. Milia? Okay, good job on your timing.
Thank you.
Okay, next, just introduce yourself if you would.
Good morning, Madam Chair, representatives. Thanks for the opportunity to talk this morning. I'm just here on behalf of myself. I'm Tom Jacobson, born and raised in Wyoming. And I appreciate the concerns, and the vetting out of these bills is critically important, and particularly with looking at each line item. I don't think many people appreciate just how much work that takes, and I do appreciate all that effort. I am in favor of both of these bills simply because I have a personal belief that we have a right to life, whether we're inside the womb or outside the womb, and I don't think that's a calling that we can make. I think in the criminal justice system, I see there's more given to those people that are on death row and those individuals that have been accused of crimes that are in that position. Not that I agree with death penalty, but that have more vetting out than people now that haven't been born. That it's easy for us to make decisions about the right to life when somebody can't argue back. And those individuals that aren't arguing back are those people that are in the womb. And I think it's clear the science is behind that. The ultrasounds that we have now that we see, it's in fact a human being. And I think removing that right is tantamount to murder. And so I am as probably a libertarian as a lot of people in Wyoming, and I appreciate the way we live, and I appreciate the relationships that we have with our doctors and the right to those privacies. But I also think ultimately our respect for human life is really the basis of everything we do. And if we don't have that respect, then it taints the other decisions that we make. So that in a nutshell is why I believe that bills like this are long overdue, and particularly in Wyoming. I mean, we pay very close attention to the lifestyles and of the people here and take care of them. And I think Wyoming has a big heart, and there's a lot of volunteerism that goes out with people that are into charitable giving, and those are just beautiful things. And I think it just is an example of who we are as a people. And I think it just taking that a step further to ultimately protect the life in the womb. And, for that reason, as an individual and a native of this state, I'm absolutely for life and for the baby. So,
Questions for Mr. Jacobson? Good job on your time as well.
Yep, thank
And
you.
I'll just say, I'm going to let a person who wants to speak against the bill come up next. Go ahead. And also, because I do have my timekeeper here next to me, and so far everyone is doing great. You can go, Mr. Jacobson. If you're getting to the 5 seconds from the end, I'm going to put my hand up like this. That's what that means, which is wrap up your sentence. But so far, so good. Okay, welcome, sir. If you'll.
He was up here first. I'm just.
No, that's
ready.
all right. What I really want to try to stick in a back and forth thing as best as we can and in the numbers. So
So I'm up.
you're up. Introduce yourself if you would, and you got 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Greg Hunter. I think you've seen me before. I'm from Laramie, Wyoming. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman, and representatives. I'll just say thank you very much for indulging. Somewhat a citizen this week. I've learned a lot. Representative Worf and I had a discussion on consensus, and I lie awake at night thinking about instead of compromise. And I thought about consensus and in relation to some of these things that we believe. And while I was born a Baptist, when I, which is a teetotaling, my mother's a teetotaler. When I first went to a Catholic fish fry, I recognized we all didn't have consensus on what a particular document said. So we haven't arrived at that consensus. Now, when I read the bill, and on the trigger bill, we're talking about Roe v. Wade. And so when I ran for office, I've run for office a few times, the word comes up, what do you do on abortion? And I always relied on my Republican Baptist mother. She said it was nobody's business. And so I went with that. And now I realize that we're in the legal realm, I became a geologist due to theology. And since we're in the legal realm, we have to now talk about what does Roe v. Wade mean? And when I read it, I didn't read it until last year or so. So I'd ask everybody to read it. And, just like a New York Times article, you have to read all the way down and you finally find the punchline. So I found the punchline. And when you read it, what they did, as soon as I read it, I go, wait a second, this reminds me of Solomon. The story of Solomon, I think some are familiar with it, that they decided, we aren't going to split the baby. And we're going to award it. I went actually back and read it, and we can have another discussion. Whether the baby was smothered or whether it died of SIDS, we can look at a different story. But when I read it, I go, ooh, the Supreme Court already made a decision that said the first 3 months, right to privacy. I would argue that's incorrect. And many amicus briefs and many of the Supreme Court said, you know what? It should go the full 9 months, just like it is in Israel, even though we give them money. In Israel, they don't regulate abortion. Everybody goes to their provider. It's the right to privacy. So I would contend that once the Supreme Court strikes down Roe v. Wade, that the public should kind of have a little bit cooling off period. We are now, once Roe v. 5 seconds. Once Roe v. Wade is done, we should have a discussion. So I would put this bill off and let's have more discussion. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Any questions? Any questions for the witness? Thank you very much. Okay, welcome. And if you want, someone else wants to come up and sit next to Deacon Mike, he's not that scary. Go ahead, introduce
that.
yourself if you would.
Thank you for that, Madam Chairman. Members of the committee, Deacon Mike Lehman, representing the Catholic Diocese of Cheyenne. I've sat in a number of these bills throughout the years and heard great testimony on both sides, wrestling with the lines. Where do we draw the lines? Individual freedom and the balance of responsibility. What's the limits of government? And what is the government's responsibility? I've learned a lot over the years from our friends on the other side who really do a good job of highlighting the vulnerable situation that women find themselves in. Things and situations that I hadn't always thought about. And they've created a sincere empathy within my heart for women in those particular situations. But what I struggle to communicate to them is that when they create that empathy, we also feel empathy for the other human being in the picture, the one that many refuse to even acknowledge. To the question about the numbers of abortions or the situations that Representative Romero Martinez's bill is addressing, that's a great question. One of the things I've learned over the years is there's almost zero oversight. We're very proud of the pro-life bills that we pass. I don't think there's much oversight. We've had former providers in the state that have acknowledged publicly, this is nobody's business. I don't care what they do down there in Cheyenne at the Capitol. And so that's a great question. What do we do from that going on? For me, it's a question, a secular question. Those that want to say, you're trying to impose your religious beliefs. No, it's a question of, what qualifies for full legal protection under the law. If being alive and being human is not enough, what else is necessary and who gets to make that decision? Everyone should want to know the answer to that question, and it's on our civic leaders' responsibility to answer that for them. If we're honest, it's being wanted. That's the other qualifier. You have to be wanted in order to have that legal protection. Believe it or not, Madam Chairman, I don't enjoy coming here year after year in these difficult, controversial subjects. I don't like it. But as I watch the terrible divide in our country and I see people less and less empathetic towards one another, and I see people who are less and less inclined to feel responsible for each other. It's true, we have many other important issues to tackle, but I'm convinced that we're never going to be able to get people to be responsible for each other as long as we continue to argue that it's okay to get rid of some. Mother Teresa said, if we have no peace, it's because we've forgotten that we belong to one another. With that, I would stand for any questions.
Questions for Deacon Lehman? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
Thanks very much. Ms. Graham, if you'll introduce yourself to the committee, please.
You betcha. My name is Susan Graham. I'm here in Cheyenne. I used to be in Casper. I'm here to give you, Mr. Melia, spoiler alert, I'm reading the book that his wife wrote regarding their child, Angela. And I guess I don't have to read anymore because she's alive. But the book was written in the midst of the pain of having a preemie and going through all of the heartache that Mr. Melia described. In regards to both of these bills, I am in favor of them, in large part because when it comes to tough decisions like the mother would make, it strikes me that the tougher and more long-lasting decision would be to realize that I killed my child for good reasons at the time, with great consensus with my provider and my family members, but at the same time, to choose adoption over abortion is always the winning solution. And thank you very much.
Questions for Mrs. Graham? Thank you very much. Okay, is there a person who would like to speak against the bill? Or two of you come up together? Mutual support, Thank you, Kathy, for running that. It really helps. I didn't know. on, make sure you stay. Dr. Miley, welcome. Introduce yourself, even though after you've been in the legislature as long as I have, and as long as Representative, although you haven't been on labor as much, you start to know all the old suspects. That was my time. Don't take that from Dr. Miley's time. Go ahead.
Madam Chairman, thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and to the committee. As you stated, I'm a board certified pediatrician and belong to the Wyoming Medical Society, and I was also the administrator of the old Division of Health and Medical Services, which is now the State Health Department. So I did submit the Health Department's budget to the Joint Appropriations Committee for 4 years, and I presented the health programs to this committee for 4 years also. And I was in the legislature for 10 years. Just some general comments. Are what we trying to do? Are we trying to prevent the need for abortions? Are we trying to make abortions illegal? Are we trying to make people who believe that abortions are not, are we trying to make that illegal? And I'm a little confused about that. As a physician, the one thing I'm really concerned about is when the legislature makes physicians that they have to be responsible to the legislature and not to their own patients. That bothers me. If I'm a physician, I feel obligated to be sure that my patient is taken care of. I don't believe that I should necessarily do what the legislature tells me that I have to do. So I have some problems with that particular part of this bill. And I will admit that it's been 25 years since I've been in the legislature. So a lot of things have changed. And I now find that what I believed back when I was running as a Republican, that things have kind of changed a little bit, and there's a difference in what the beliefs are at this point. I believe in the limited government, individual rights, and being financially responsible. As I see what's going on now, it seems like that the legislature can determine what beliefs the people can accept and what beliefs they don't. So we come to this, does big government have the ability to tell people what they believe? Do you believe in that, or do you not believe in that? Do you believe that individuals have rights in determining what they can do, or do you not believe in that? Do you believe in the free speech amendment to the Constitution? Do you believe that some beliefs are protected by that, or do you not? So those are the questions that I think you as legislators have to answer. And I'm concerned when you set precedents that the legislature can determine what you can and cannot believe.
Thank you. Questions for Dr. Miley? Okay, we're going to go ahead. You can sit down. Bonnie, do we have anybody online? Let's see if we can ask two people who are online to who want to speak in favor of the bill to raise their hand, and Bonnie will let you in.
Yeah, we have 3 people with their hand up, so shall I admit 2?
Admit in, yeah, start with 2 and we'll see what we get. We try to go back and forth so that there may be complaints, but at least hopefully not about the ability of people to testify.
Madam Chair, I've admitted Riata Walker.
Okay. Ms. Walker or Dr. Walker, would you just introduce yourself for the committee, please? Welcome.
Madam Chairman, thank you. I'm in Casper. I'm sorry I'm not there with you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this committee today about an issue that is as personal to me as it comes. And I apologize in advance. This may be a little long, but I have a lot to say on the matter. I'll speak fast. My husband and I had to make the hardest decision of our lives a little over 2 years ago for a child we desperately wanted. We found out a little over halfway through the pregnancy that our daughter was very sick. We were sent to Denver and still never dreamed that we'd end up losing her. After further testing and diagnosis and conferring with our doctors at maternal fetal medicine, we were presented with our options. None of them involved us bringing our baby home. Our daughter had rare severe heart defects and chromosomal issues. We were told we could try to carry to term, putting me at greater health risk, or we could terminate the pregnancy either by surgical procedure, also known as a D&E, or by induced labor, which is what we chose. I've since learned many women in my position are not offered that option. When all of your options are terrible, you try to pick the one that will cause the least amount of suffering. We chose to suffer so that our daughter didn't have to. So we induced labor and she was born. We were able to organize her baptism and we were able to hold her and say goodbye in our own way. Her life was honored in the best way it could have been, all while my health was the top priority of the medical team. I don't even know how to explain to you what it feels like to go from planning your baby shower to planning how you're going to say goodbye and what to do with your child's remains. What it's like to walk into a hospital pregnant, knowing you won't be walking out with the baby. You get home, you pack away all of the baby things that you've been collecting because it's just too painful, and you don't know if you're ever going to have another baby to use them. And then your milk comes in, and you now have to deal with the pain of that as you're suffering from the grief of losing a child. I'm telling you all of this so that you might understand that these decisions are not made lightly, and they are so complex and unique to every situation. These are real people facing real challenges, and one size does not fit all. My husband and I had to weigh so many different factors once we knew our daughter's fate, and we had to think about our home, our finances, our jobs, our future children we might have. The list goes on. No two families are in the same situation, and while you may think that you'd make a different decision, you aren't living their life. So I am pleading to you all, please leave these decisions to the parents and their doctors. No one is more invested in that child's well-being than them, and they are the best people to make medical decisions for their child. Just a couple more quick points before I finish. If you are coming at this as a Republican, which I am, consider your principles of government's role in our private lives. Does government really have the right to tell us what medical decisions we can make? If you are coming at this from a religious belief standpoint, is it right for a religion to dictate laws over those who don't prescribe to the same beliefs? There is a separation between church and state for a reason, and I would hope that as ethical lawmakers, you would honor and respect those boundaries. If you are focused on conserving funds, I mean, this is a budget session after all, so let's bring money into that discussion. These children, like our daughter, would bring a large financial burden to the state once the parents are maxed out on medical bills and various other costs that go along with financial aid, programs, and services that are available to families in need. I'm talking about a huge strain on Medicaid, all the way down to SNAP benefits and unemployment. We are Wyoming, and in Wyoming, we trust our neighbors to do the right thing. Trust us to make the right medical decisions for our family and keep our government focused on real issues like balancing our budget, boosting our economy, training our workforce, etc. I ask that you vote no to House Bill 149 and House Bill 92. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? We're very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Madam
Donna, is there
Chair, I
something else?
also admitted Mike McDonald.
Okay.
About 16 years old. He was conceived in rape. His mother was 15. She had had.
Hi, this is actually not Mike McDonald. Mike is my husband.
If you just introduce yourself for the benefit of the committee, then please.
And I'm turning off the other hearing going on in the next room so that I can just focus on.
Oh, how that works.
Yeah. So my name is Dr. Katie Noyes. I'm a family physician that lives and works in Jackson, Wyoming.
I'm sorry, what was your last name?
Noyes,
Noyes.
N-O-Y-E-S. Yep. So I'm a family medicine doctor. I take care of women, men, children, pregnant women, elderly people. And my patients live in all counties. I think I serve patients in 8 different counties, including Fremont, Sublette, Lincoln, Sweetwater, Park, Teton. I missed a few in there, but I see a lot of your constituents. I have about 16 years of medical training and practice under my belt, which I know is not a lot, but it's enough. And I am here to oppose both of these bills. Despite growing up Catholic, I took a very academic perspective to understanding women's and global health in college, and interesting learning very much so that abortion rates fall in regions where it is broadly legal. Thankfully, in the last 30 years, we've seen the unintended pregnancy rate decline in many countries. And there's multiple reasons for that. But what is clearly obvious in the research is that in countries where there are more legal restrictions in place, and where it also may be harder to obtain safe contraception, the number of unintended pregnancies ending in abortion increase. So if our goal is to reduce the number of unwanted pregnancies, reduce the number of abortions, making them illegal or adding undue restrictions is simply going to backfire. And that's very clearly established in the literature. I wanted to talk a little bit about my job as a physician. I see my role as both an educator and a healer, not a healer, educator and an advocate. So when someone walks in with type 2 diabetes, I'm going to provide them the most up-to-date medical information on all their treatment options, behavioral, medication, referral sources. And I'm going to do the same thing when a woman walks into my office with a pregnancy. If that pregnant woman wants to pursue obstetrical care and carry the pregnancy to term, I'm going to make sure she gets all the information she needs and gets the best care possible. If the woman is pregnant and wants to pursue, carry the pregnancy and pursue adoption, I'm going to make sure she has all the adoption resources that she needs. And if a woman comes to me and wants to end the pregnancy, I am going to help her understand all of her options and what is in
5 seconds.
okay, and what is entailed. So what these laws do is interfere, place the government right into that sacred conversation between me and my patient. It prevents me from doing my job, and it prevents the patient from allowing to make their own decisions about their health care. It actually violates the Wyoming state constitution, which has a clause that states every Wyoming citizen has the right to make their own healthcare decisions without undue infringement by the government.
Okay,
This is
Dr. Seeing as there was kind of a period there, I'm going to cut you off on your 3 minutes. Thanks very much for being here.
Yep.
Okay, now we'll go back to the room. And do we have 2 more folks who want to speak in favor of the bill? Come on up. If you can come up 2 by 2, sort of like Noah's Ark, we can, just one, okay. I guess we're scaring them off. Oh, here we go. Go ahead, sir, if you introduce yourself and for the committee, please.
Madam Chair and committee, I'm voting member of Cheyenne, Tom Perea, and I deal with people every week as a minister here in Cheyenne, and I wasn't planning on speaking, I was just planning on coming to support the bill, but my convictions don't allow me to sit back and observe. Just 2 quick examples, and the reason I support the bill is one, like I said, I deal with people every week that have been have made bad and good choices, and one of them is a close family member, and she had an abortion, and also had an unplanned child. And to see the both that were in disagreement with what I believe, both hurt her. And to see the lesser of the 2 evils would be to say that the one, the abortion harmed her the most, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. To see the child that she gave birth to is wonderful. To be able to see, yeah, the struggles that she has with him is hard, but I'm so thankful that she chose to have that one because it was my grandchild. And so I would ask that you would consider that. Also, I really feel like as we're dealing with a divisive country with discrimination and racism, one of the hidden forms of racism that we're seeing is the Black community. Abortion has really affected the Black community, which my brothers, and I have many friends that are part of that community and the minority community, but especially the Black community. Close to 20 million abortions have taken place in the Black community to date. And I think the depopulation of them has harmed them even more so. So I would ask that you would consider this bill, and thank you for your time. But I appreciate it because I thank God we do live in a country that is free, and people have those freedoms. But when you force people that have strong convictions to pay for those, then that's another story. So thank you once again, Madam
Questions for
Chair.
Reverend Perea? Okay, thanks so much. Welcome, ma'am. And Ms. Lees, if you'll introduce yourself for the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And a green light is on, so is
Yep.
that?
Talk right away. You got
Okay,
3 minutes.
I didn't press a button and it just came. So, okay, I am Jimmy D. Lees. I am a volunteer lobbyist for the Republican Women of Sheridan County. As of November, we had 175 members. And I am the chairman of the Legislative Action Committee, and we support Wyoming legislation that substantially upholds the Wyoming Republican platform, which has the first timeless truth that we are all equal in God's eyes and deserve a right to life. And this fact was stated in a resolution by the Republican Women of Sheridan County and the Wyoming Federation of Republican Women, who support legislation protecting the unborn and urge their legislators to do the same. The most important right we have is the right to life, and the only purpose of government is to protect our God-given rights. The greatest defense the young of any species has is referred to as its charm. When you look at a cute little baby tiger, who would want to hurt it? It's so cute. When you look at a precious little human baby, harming it in any way would seem barbaric. And yet what is done to human babies inside the womb, where we cannot see these precious little ones, is barbaric. An increasing number of countries around the world have moved away from this practice for that very purpose. It is time we do too also. The unborn child is a unique individual. I am here as a human being, not as a religious person, not as a non-religious person, as a human being wanting to protect fellow human beings, born or unborn, because the unborn cannot protect themselves. In regards to, and that was all referring to HB 92, if the Supreme Court strikes Roe v. Wade, it does go back to the state, and I think Wyoming needs to be prepared. And in terms of HB 149, the Human Life Equality Prohibition Discrimination, you've heard it said, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Abortion is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Sometimes these problems the child may have can be fixed after they're born. Sometimes they can't. But people in this life live with blindness. People live with all kinds of difficulties, just like our military people come back without arms and legs. These problems can be addressed at another time.
5 seconds.
So finally, I would like to quote Mahatma Gandhi. He said it very succinctly: you can judge a society by how they treat their weakest members.
Thank you, Ms. Lees. Questions
Thank
for
you.
Ms. Lees? Okay, thank you so much. Let's see. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in opposition to the bill? Come on up. While she's getting seated, I certainly congratulate all the folks on maintaining our decorum. It's a hard thing. Several years ago, I had to chair the meeting on the death penalty repeal too, and people managed to hold up pretty well, and I really appreciate that. It makes it a lot easier up here, even though they are hard topics. Go ahead, introduce yourself if you would.
Thank you, Chairman Wilson, members of the committee, and I appreciate the way you're conducting the hearing. We had some concerns earlier this week, I think, in some of the Senate hearings where the legislators were able to talk and a number of people waited hours online and weren't able to. So thank you so much for giving us all this opportunity. Sharon Breitweiser with Pro-Choice Wyoming. I would like to heed your comments of not repeating what's been said. I'd like to echo what Dr. Noyes and Mrs. Little Walker said in regard to the two bills and offer a few additional comments. We are against both of these bills. I'd like to mention that one thing that I haven't heard come up is the risk of maternal mortality, of maternal health risks. When you start forcing every woman to carry every pregnancy to term, you're going to increase that risk, whereas keeping abortion safe and legal will reduce the risk of death for women in Wyoming and elsewhere. The death rate for childbirth is about 9 deaths for every 100,000 deliveries. Doesn't sound like a lot, but you are, and often in many cases, not every woman's pregnancy goes perfectly, and there could be many health risks. We've heard that banning abortion is not just going to magically make it go away. Before Roe v. Wade, there were hundreds of thousands of illegal abortions, and statistics I've seen were back in 1965, 17% of all deaths attributed to pregnancy and childbirth were due to illegal abortions. And I know we have come away from the days of the coat hanger, hopefully, but we're still going to be forcing women to turn to self-administered abortions, to seek out other options, as well as travel out of state. We've heard people say today that the abortion is a problem that needs to be solved. I respectfully submit that it's a medical procedure that women need access to, and part of the continuum of care. I think we also, and I know this may or may not resonate with some of the members of the committee, but women are more likely to remain in poverty, stay in abusive relationships if they don't have bodily autonomy and can't control what happens with their lives and their bodies. We have also heard, and you know that, well, everybody in Wyoming's a pro-life state. I don't particularly believe that the people of Wyoming want to force women to go out of state for essential health care, take matters into their own hands. We've heard about internationally, some saying that's good, some saying it's bad. I don't want Wyoming to be the next Iraq, a country that completely bans abortion for its citizens. I just like, especially those were more in regard to for both bills, but specifically the trigger ban. In regard to the reasons ban, the 192, as we've heard, you just can't know everyone's circumstances. And I don't think anything's accomplished by forcing people to become parents against their will. So thank you so much for the opportunity and for your thoughtful consideration of these bills.
Questions for Ms. Breybiser?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's see. Let's just check back online again. Do we have more folks online?
We have one person with their hand up. I'll
Let
admit
that person
them.
in, please.
Appreciate it. I believe I recognize another position. I can't say the word.
Madam Chair, I admitted Marty Halverson.
Okay.
Good morning, Chairman Wilson and committee. Pardon me for not having my video on. Got a little problem there. I am representing tens of thousands of Wyoming folks who are pro-life and in support of these two bills, House Bill 92 and House Bill 149. Legal scholars have been saying out loud for the last 5 or 10 years that Roe versus Wade was badly reasoned, something we in the pro-life movement have known for almost 50 years. In 2022, we have reason to hope that a Supreme Court decision will recognize this and perhaps overturn Roe versus Wade. Our hope is that passing this bill will set up Wyoming to put up some meaningful sideboards on the practice of abortion in our state. As for House Bill 149, that this bill is even needed is frightening. We know discriminatory abortions are occurring in other states. Please vote to ban this practice in Wyoming. I just want to say one thing about what's being referred to as fetal anomalies. The science is advancing so rapidly. Some of these can be treated, sometimes successfully, after delivery. In cases where this is not possible, there is now there are organizations in states which do neonatal hospice. We know that babies can feel pain, and when they go into this hospice, and I just can't imagine the work that these hospice people do. They are kept pain-free, and while nature takes its course. So please cast your aye votes for House Bill 92 and House Bill 149. Thank you, committee.
Questions for Ms. Halverson? Okay, thanks very much. Okay, back to the room, and let's see, where were we at? And how about two people in favor of the bill? Come on up, and then we'll take some more folks against, in opposition to the bill. Trying to keep track of my people here. We've got maybe another 5-10 minutes, roughly. I want to stop at 9:30 so that we can work the bills. Welcome, ma'am. If you'll introduce yourself. Oh, press the little depression in the front.
Good
there.
morning.
Good morning.
Madam Chairwoman, representatives. My name is Nina Weber, and I would just like to make a statement on these two bills. Every human being deserves a right to life and should not be discriminated against based on disabilities or other selective reasons. We are all equal in God's eyes and under the law. All deserve a right to live, as stated in the timeless truths of the Republican Party platform. I support this legislation protecting the unborn and urge you to do the same. Please vote to uphold the sanctity of all innocent life. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Weber? Okay, thanks so much. Welcome, sir. If you'd like to introduce yourself for the committee, please.
Yes, my name is David Harney. I live in Sheridan, Wyoming. And thank you, Madam Chairman and representatives, for letting me testify. I am for both of these bills. In the past, I wasn't always of that opinion. In 1994, I was a single parent raising two teenage kids. My 15-year-old daughter was seeing a 21-year-old and holding down a full-time job, and with everything else in life, it was tough to keep her imprisoned in my house. So she came to me one day and said, "Dad, I'm pregnant." And I said, "I'm not raising another child at this point in my life." And we went to CU Medical Center in Denver. I was living in Colorado. They gave her some medication after a sonogram in the morning, and an abortion took place that afternoon. I can tell you that changed my heart and it changed my feelings. About 3 months later, she became pregnant again. And this time I said, "We're going to take this responsibility." And we worked together. We found a place in Nebraska that would accept her to coach her and give her some skills. They got her GED. And I now have a 27-year-old grandson who's a very responsible individual. Wish I could have had both of them. As you can still see, that experience still affects me. I think life is precious, and I think both of these bills deserve your vote. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Harney? And Mr. Harney, we're sorry for your loss too, because we can see that you still feel it. Okay, do we have anybody that wants to testify in favor of or against the bills? Sorry, keeping them straight here. We got time for probably about 2 more folks at 3 minutes each, maybe 3 people. Welcome. Introduce yourself for the committee, if you would.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Arano. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I speak as someone who these bills could harm. These bills do not support me or other women and families in this state. I want to be able to access the best medical care possible should I need it, and these bills prohibit that. I have a right under our Constitution to healthcare access. These bills would remove my ability to have bodily autonomy in our great state. Please help me feel safe and welcome in this state I love so much by voting no to both of these bills. Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Arano? Thanks for coming. Okay, we got about, I think we'd say about room for 3 more folks. Do we have any more? Is there anyone else in the room who wants to testify? I think we've gone just about done everyone in. Is there anyone left online? Well, and in that case, public testimony is closed. And I'm so sorry. I'm not sure if
I believe it's up to you, Madam Chairman.
Go ahead and go. Jump in.
Representative Connolly. Flitner. Hallinan. LeBeau.
No.
Ottman. Romero Martinez. Stivar. Wharf. Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, we have 7 ayes, 2 noes, the noes being Representatives Connolly and Representative LeBeau.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Madam Chair.
Representative Connolly.
Madam Chair, I'm going to offer several amendments. The first one being on page 2, lines 1 and 2, to delete attempted to perform or cause to be performed.
Okay, discussion, and explain that a little further
Yeah.
if you would, Representative Connolly.
Yeah, Madam Chair, honestly, my major concern is about the cause to be, but when I was reading this a little bit more carefully, the deletion of or attempt to perform, I think makes sense because I don't understand what it means for a physician to attempt something. And I think honestly, the intent of this is that shall perform an abortion. But I'm very concerned about the next clause, or cause to be performed. And this is where we've heard over and over again that this language right here interferes in that doctor-patient relationship. If a doctor even thinks that an individual could have an abortion, because of information, it would be causing that a person has a legal abortion somewhere else, that physician could be liable for punishment, including a felony for an imprisonment up to 14 years. So that language, I think, is incredibly chilling to our medical community, and honestly will hurt the best practices for a pregnant woman to get the kind of information that is needed in order to move forward in terms of the care of herself and her fetus.
Okay, any more discussion on the amendment? Representative Flitner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It is on page 2, line 1, delete attempt
Picking up
to.
with the comma.
Yep. And then on line 2, delete up to the word performed. So the sentence would then read, no person shall intentionally perform an abortion if the person knows. So we're getting rid of those intermediate,
intention.
clauses.
Any other discussion on the, okay, so
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for reading my thoughts. I happen to agree with this motion, because to cause to be performed an abortion, I would say that could be just verbal comments that I think that you should have an abortion for a person, and I don't think that would be an appropriate reason to have these penalties associated with that. So I think that's too broad. So I agree with that.
any more discussion? Okay, all in favor of the amendment, then please just raise your hand so I can count better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? 2. Okay, that amendment passed. ahead, Representative Connolly, did you have another one?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm going to have three.
Oh, well, I might not let you have all three all at once. We're
Okay,
going
well-
2 and 2.
I know. All right, so Madam Chair, on page 3, I'd like to delete lines 2 and 3.
Seconded by LeBeau. So if I can, discussion there, I do have a question. So I printed out the statutes here for me. So let's see, this would be a new section. So my question, Representative Connolly, is right now, this 14-year penalty is actually in statute for several other sections. It's in for 102, which is no abortion after viability. It's in for 103, which is the performance of an abortion not terminating the viability, and 104, which is means of treatment for viability. So I have not found what if this is removed. So would you be leaving in the sub paragraph 2 subject to civil liability, and then is there a criminal penalty remaining that flows from somewhere else in that chapter?
Madam Chairman, my motion takes away the felony as punishment. The civil liability that is in Romanet 2 would remain. I believe that there is a penalty that's associated elsewhere. But my motion is to get rid of a felony punishable by 14 years in prison.
And do you,
Madam Chairman, thank you. And I don't disagree with this. I don't want to make felons. I honestly don't. But I think based on what you've just provided to us in terms of what the ripple effect of this might be, I'm going to hold off on my support of this for now.
we're amending. It's already moved. Go ahead, Representative Connolly. Gladys, she's got one more. Go ahead.
All right. Madam Chair, I got in quick enough this time. On page 4, line 19, delete from line 19 after the word meromelia through the end of the page and on to page 5, line 3.
And inserting an or before meromelia.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Was there a second? Rep. LeBeau, any question, any discussion on this?
Madam Chair, I mean, this was the discussion about lethal fetal anomalies and what could happen in terms of the suffering of a fetus or a baby.
All in favor of that amendment?
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I have a
Representative
question.
Connolly.
I don't know what meromelia is. Would you give us an explanation for that?
Mr. Vice Chair, actually, I looked that up last night. Meromelia is the absence of, or partial absence of a limb.
Okay.
Like missing your leg or something. And so is Amelia. And I'm not going to have the doctors correct. That's the legislative definition. Oh, I turned my thing up. Okay,
I would have a friendly amendment to that,
well, you may offer
if I
it.
may.
Mhm.
I would delete that Miramelia from the amendment and just have the rest of the amendment go through.
Just before ask, is there a second for discussion? Or let me just confirm now, so Representative Hallinan, the amendment doesn't currently include Miramelia. Miramelia is part of the.
Oh, okay.
Rated, yeah, so, all right, so you withdraw
Okay.
your amendment?
I withdraw it.
Okay, all right. So all in favor of this amendment, please just raise your hand so I can count. 1, 2, 3. Okay, opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Any remaining, Representative Connolly? Okay, okay. Question being called on the bill. Bonnie, would you please call the roll?
Representatives Connolly,
No.
Flitner. Hallinan,
Aye.
LeBeau. No. Ottman.
Aye.
Romero Martinez.
Aye.
Stivar.
Aye.
Worf.
Aye.
Madam Chairwoman.
Aye.
Madam Chairwoman, we have 7 ayes, 2 noes, the noes being Representative Connolly and Representative LeBeau.
Okay, so the committee is adjourned, and I just want to say thank you to all folks who came. The procedure, I would suspect most of you have been here before, but is that the bill goes to the floor, we have a committee of the whole discussion, second and third readings, and then it will go down the hall to the Senate, if assuming it passes the House, or both bills pass the House, and the same